The hospital room smelled like bleach and death. Blake Carrington couldn't move his legs anymore. The richest man in America, $8.3 billion sitting in accounts he'd never touch again, was dying on a mattress that cost $200. 3 days. That's what the doctor said. His liver was gone. His kidneys were shutting down. The machines beeped slower every hour. Blake stared at the ceiling tiles and counted them. 47. He'd counted them 6 times already. Anything to avoid looking at the door where his family waited. Not for him to get better, for him to die. He heard them through the walls. Elise, his wife, was on the phone with her lawyer. Carter, his son, was laughing at something on his phone. Gerald, his half-brother, kept asking nurses when the final paperwork would be ready. Nobody was crying. Nobody was praying. They were planning. Blake had built an empire from nothing, started with a $500 loan and turned it into hotels, tech companies, real estate across 3 states. He'd been on magazine covers. Presidents knew his name. But right now, dying alone while his family divided up his money in the hallway, Blake realized something. He had nothing. The doctors came in twice that morning. Both times they looked at their charts and looked at him like he was already a corpse. Dr. Patterson, the head physician, pulled Elise aside. Blake heard every word. "We've done everything we can. His body is rejecting treatment. The toxins in his blood are too advanced. I'm sorry, but you should prepare." Elise nodded. She didn't cry. Blake closed his eyes. His whole body hurt. Not just from the disease, from the weight of 58 years of choices he couldn't take back. He thought about his childhood, growing up in a roach-infested apartment in Los Angeles, watching his mother work 3 jobs and still come home to an empty fridge. He'd promised himself he'd never be poor again. He'd kept that promise. But somewhere along the way, he'd become something worse than poor. He'd become empty. The room grew darker. Blake wasn't sure if it was the medication or if he was slipping away. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, slow, irregular, fading. Then the door opened. Blake didn't open his eyes. Probably another nurse coming to check vitals he didn't have anymore. But the footsteps were different. Light. Hesitant. Young. Blake forced his eyes open. A boy stood at the foot of his bed. Barefoot. Torn jeans. A jacket 2 sizes too big. He couldn't have been more than 16. And he was holding a water bottle. Welcome to this story. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? We're just getting started, and your support means everything. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. Elise stood outside the hospital room checking her Rolex for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. She wasn't worried about Blake. She was worried about the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Blake's company, Carrington Industries, needed a new CEO by end of week. The shareholders were already circling. Carter sat in the waiting room scrolling through luxury car websites. He'd already picked out the Bugatti he'd buy once the will cleared. His father had 3 days left, maybe less. Carter had stopped visiting the room 2 days ago. What was the point? Blake was already gone. Gerald stood by the window watching the city lights flicker below. He'd waited 30 years for this moment. 30 years of being the half-brother, the one who got the smaller office, the smaller bonus, the smaller respect. But he'd been patient, and patience always paid off. The lawyer had already confirmed it. Gerald was named in the will, 20% of everything. That was $1.6 billion, enough to finally step out of Blake's shadow and build something of his own. Elise's phone buzzed, her assistant. The funeral home called. They need final numbers for the service. Tell them 200 guests, no more. Keep it private. And the flowers. White roses. Blake hated color. She hung up and looked at Carter. Did you write your speech yet? Carter didn't look up from his phone. Speech for what? For your father's funeral. You're giving the eulogy. Can't Gerald do it? You're his son. Carter sighed. Fine, I'll have someone write it. Elise turned back to her phone. This was how they grieved, with schedules and arrangements and division of assets. There were no tears because there was nothing left to cry about. Blake had been dying for months, and honestly, the family had checked out long before the diagnosis. Inside the room, machines beeped steadily. Blake's breathing was shallow, his chest barely rising. The morphine kept him floating somewhere between sleep and death. He could still hear them, though. Every word. Every cold, calculated word. He'd built his empire for them. Worked 18-hour days so Carter would never know hunger. Bought Elise everything she ever wanted. Gave Gerald opportunities he never deserved. And this was the thanks. They were already spending money he hadn't left them yet. Blake tried to move his hand but couldn't. The IV pulled at his skin. He wanted to rip it out, walk into that hallway and tell them all the truth, but his body wouldn't obey anymore. The cancer had won, or whatever this was, because deep down Blake knew something the doctors didn't. This wasn't just cancer. The symptoms didn't match. The speed didn't match. Something else was killing him, something he'd done. The door opened again. A nurse walked in, checked his vitals, and left without a word. She didn't ask how he felt, didn't offer comfort. He was just another body waiting for a death certificate. Blake closed his eyes. Maybe they were right. Maybe he deserved this. Maybe dying alone in a room while people who should love him planned his funeral was exactly the ending a man like him earned. The room went quiet except for the machines. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Barefoot. Coming closer. Blake's mind drifted in and out like a broken radio signal. He could hear voices but couldn't make out words. He could feel pain but couldn't locate where it started. The morphine drip kept him floating in this strange middle place between alive and dead. He dreamed about his first business deal. 23 years old, standing in a Los Angeles boardroom with a suit he'd bought at Goodwill. He'd pitched a real estate investment to men 3 times his age. They'd laughed at him. He'd made $2 million off that deal, proved them all wrong. That became his pattern. People doubted him, and he crushed them. Rivals underestimated him, and he buried them. The world said no, and Blake Carrington said, "Watch me." 58 years of winning, and now he was losing the only fight that mattered. Outside his room, Gerald stood talking to Dr. Patterson in hushed tones. "How much longer?" Gerald asked. "Could be hours, could be 2 days. His body is fighting, but the toxins are overwhelming his system." "Is he in pain?" "We're managing it." Gerald nodded. He wasn't asking because he cared. He was asking because he needed to know when to make his move. Once Blake died, there'd be a power vacuum at Carrington Industries. Gerald had already lined up 3 board members who'd vote him in as interim CEO. Blake had built the empire, but Gerald would inherit it. That's how it always worked. The strong built, the smart inherited. Dr. Patterson walked away, and Gerald pulled out his phone. He texted his lawyer. "Prepare the paperwork. It's almost time." Back inside the room, Blake opened his eyes. The ceiling tiles were still there. Still 47. Still meaningless. He thought about his funeral. Who would come? Business partners who wanted to network. Employees who wanted to keep their jobs. Reporters who wanted a story. But who would actually mourn him? Who would cry real tears? Blake couldn't think of a single name. His mother had died 15 years ago. He'd been too busy with a merger to attend her funeral. Sent flowers instead. White roses. She'd hated white roses. His first wife left him after 2 years, said he loved money more than her. She wasn't wrong. His daughter from that marriage didn't speak to him anymore. He'd missed her wedding, her graduation, her first child. Sent checks instead of showing up. And now Elise, Carter, Gerald, they were here, but not really. They were waiting. Watching the clock. Calculating. Blake had spent his entire life building something, and he'd forgotten to build the one thing that mattered. A reason for people to care when he was gone. The machines beeped slower. His breathing got harder. The room felt colder. Blake could feel it now. Death wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. It was lonely. It was exactly what he deserved. He closed his eyes again and waited. But then something changed. The door creaked open, not the usual sounds of nurses or doctors or family members pretending to care. This was different. Blake forced his eyes open one more time, and that's when he saw him, the boy, barefoot, skinny, no older than 16. Wearing clothes that looked like they'd been pulled from a donation bin. His eyes were dark, focused, angry, and in his hand he held a cracked plastic water bottle. The boy didn't say anything at first, just stood there at the foot of Blake's bed, staring. Blake tried to speak, but couldn't. His throat was too dry. His voice was gone. The boy stepped closer, placed the water bottle on the side table, and then he spoke. 4 words that changed everything. "This is why you're dying." The security guard at the door hadn't noticed the boy slip in. Marcus Owens moved like a shadow. He'd learned how to be invisible growing up in Progressive Heights, where being seen by the wrong people could get you hurt. He walked past the nurses' station without making a sound, past the doctors huddled around charts, past Elise and Carter and Gerald standing in the hallway arguing about money. None of them saw him. They were too busy dividing up a dead man's fortune to notice a poor black kid in torn jeans. Marcus had been planning this for 3 weeks, ever since he'd found out Blake Carrington was dying in this hospital. Ever since he'd connected the dots that nobody else wanted to connect. He pushed open the door to room 447. Blake Carrington looked smaller than Marcus expected. On TVs, in magazines, the billionaire always looked powerful, untouchable. But lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines, Blake just looked human. Weak. Dying. Good. Marcus walked to the bedside and pulled the water bottle from his jacket pocket. It was cracked, dirty, the label half peeled off. He'd carried it for 6 months, kept it as evidence, as proof. He set it down on the table next to Blake's bed. Blake's eyes opened slowly, confused, struggling to focus. Marcus didn't wait for permission to speak. "This water is why you're dying." Blake's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus pointed at the bottle. "You don't recognize it, do you? Why would you? You never drank from it. Never had to." The machines beeped faster. Blake's heart rate was rising. "This came from Progressive Heights, the neighborhood your company poisoned, the place you destroyed so you could build your luxury apartments." Blake tried to sit up but couldn't. His body wouldn't cooperate. Marcus kept talking. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "My mother drank this water every day for 2 years. So did my little sister. So did 300 other people in our neighborhood. You know what happened to them? Silence. They got sick. Liver disease. Kidney failure. Cancer. Same thing you've got right now." Blake's eyes went wide. "Yeah, you feel that? That pain in your chest? That's what my mom felt. That confusion? That's what she went through. Those doctors telling your family there's nothing they can do? That's what they told us." Marcus picked up the bottle and held it in front of Blake's face. "Your company cut corners on the water filtration system, saved $3 million, let heavy metals and toxins leak into our supply for 2 years before anyone noticed. By then, it was too late." A tear rolled down Blake's cheek. Marcus didn't care. "My mom died 16 months ago. She was 34. My sister died 4 months after that. She was 7. The room went silent except for the machines. "You built your empire on our graves, and now you're dying the same way they did." Blake tried to speak. His lips moved. Finally, a whisper. "I didn't know." Marcus leaned in close. "Yes, you did." Everyone in the hospital room froze. The door had swung open behind Marcus. A security guard stood there, hand on his radio, ready to call for backup. But he didn't move, because Blake Carrington, the dying billionaire, had lifted his hand. Just barely. Just enough. A signal. Wait. The guard hesitated but stayed at the door. Gerald pushed past him into the room. What the hell is this? Who's this kid? Marcus didn't turn around. He kept his eyes locked on Blake. Blake stared at the water bottle. His mind was racing even though his body was shutting down. The pieces were falling into place. The unexplained symptoms. The rapid deterioration. The way the doctors couldn't figure out exactly what was killing him. It wasn't just cancer. It was poison. The same poison his company had let seep into Progressive Heights. Karma. Gerald grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. Get out of here before I have you arrested. But Marcus didn't move. He shrugged Gerald's hand off and spoke directly to Blake. You want to know the worst part? Nobody cared. The news covered it for 1 week. Your lawyers paid off the families who could afford lawyers. The rest of us? We got nothing. You moved on. Built 3 more buildings. Made another $1 billion. Blake's breathing got heavier. The machines started beeping erratically. A nurse rushed in. Sir, you need to leave. Now. Marcus finally stepped back. But before he left, he said one more thing. My mom's name was Sarah Owens. My sister's name was Kennedy. I want you to remember those names when you die. He turned and walked toward the door. Gerald blocked his path. You just threatened a dying man. I'm calling the police. Marcus looked up at him. No fear in his eyes, just cold, hard truth. Go ahead, call them. Tell them a kid brought a water bottle into a hospital room. See what they do. He pushed past Gerald and walked out. The room erupted into chaos. Nurses checking Blake's vitals, Elise demanding answers, Carter recording everything on his phone. But Blake wasn't paying attention to any of it. He was staring at that cracked plastic water bottle, and for the first time in 3 days, his mind was clear. He knew exactly why he was dying, and he knew exactly what he had to do. The family stared at the door where Marcus had disappeared. Elise was the first to speak. Who was that? Nobody answered. Gerald picked up the water bottle from the table, examined it like it was evidence in a crime scene. This is ridiculous. Some street kid wanders in here with a conspiracy theory and we're supposed to believe him. Carter was still recording on his phone. This is going viral. Billionaire confronted by kid claiming, "Put that phone away," Elise snapped. But Blake wasn't listening to any of them. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Progressive Heights. He remembered that project. Of course he did. It was 7 years ago. A rundown neighborhood sitting on prime real estate. Blake's company had bought the land for pennies, promised to revitalize the community, build affordable housing. Instead, they'd demolished everything and built luxury condos. The water issue had come up during construction. The filtration system needed an upgrade. The engineering team had submitted a report. Cost: $3.2 million. Blake had been in that meeting. He remembered his exact words. Find a cheaper solution. They did. They bypassed half the filtration process, saved the money. Met the deadline. The condos sold for $2 million each. Blake had made $340 million on that project. He'd never thought about it again. Until now. Dr. Patterson rushed back into the room with 2 other doctors. They checked the monitors, adjusted the IV, asked Blake questions he couldn't answer. His heart rate spiked. What happened in here? Gerald pointed at the door. Some kid broke in and started making accusations. Upset him. Dr. Brady Patterson turned to the security guard. How did someone get past you? The guard had no answer. Elise moved closer to Blake's bed. For the first time in months, she actually looked at her husband's face. Really looked. Blake, are you okay? Blake's lips moved. A whisper. The water. What? Test. The water. Dr. Patterson leaned in. Mr. Carrington. What water? Blake's hand trembled as he tried to point at the bottle Gerald was holding. Gerald looked down at it, then at Blake. You want us to test this? Blake, this is some kid's prank. You're dying of liver failure, not— Test it, Blake said, louder this time. The effort made him cough, his whole body shaking. The monitors went crazy. Nurses rushed in with equipment. But Blake kept saying it. Test. The— water. Dr. Patterson nodded to a nurse. Take the bottle to the lab. Run a full toxicology screen. Gerald tried to object, but Elise cut him off. Just do it. The nurse took the bottle and left. Blake closed his eyes. He felt like he was drowning, like his lungs were filling with water, contaminated water, water that tasted like metal and death. Sarah Owens, Kennedy Owens. Those names echoed in his head. How many others were there? How many names he'd never know? How many families destroyed so he could add another zero to his net worth? The doctor stabilized him. The machines calmed down. Everyone left the room except Elise. She sat in the chair next to his bed. They hadn't been alone together in over a year. Blake, she said quietly. What did you do? Blake didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because he already knew the truth. Marcus didn't go home. He sat on a bench 3 blocks from the hospital, hands shaking, adrenaline wearing off. He'd done it. He'd looked Blake Carrington in the eye and told him the truth nobody else would say. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt empty. Because his mom was still dead. His sister was still gone. And saying words to a dying man wouldn't bring them back. Marcus pulled out his phone. No missed calls, no texts, nobody wondering where he was. He'd been living in his cousin's basement for 8 months, sleeping on a couch that smelled like cigarettes, going to school when he could, working at a gas station on weekends. This was his life now. The life Blake Carrington's greed had left him with. Marcus thought about his mom's last days, how she'd tried to hide the pain, how she'd kept working even when she could barely stand. How she'd spent her final paycheck on Kennedy's birthday present instead of her medication. She'd died 2 days after Kennedy's 7th birthday. Kennedy had died 4 months later, asking for her mom. Marcus had been there for both. 15 years old, watching the only family he had disappear because they drank water from a tap. He looked up at the hospital building. Lights on in every window. Rich people getting saved. Poor people working the night shift to keep them alive. That's how the world worked. The rich got richer. The poor got buried. Marcus stood up. He'd said what he needed to say. Done what he came to do. Now he had to figure out what came next. But as he started walking away, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. Hello? A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. Is this Marcus Owens? Yeah, who's this? This is Patricia Chen. I'm Mr. Carrington's personal attorney. He wants to speak with you. Marcus stopped walking. What? Mr. Carrington has requested a private meeting with you. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Will you come? Marcus's heart pounded. Why? I don't have that information. Will you come or not? Marcus thought about hanging up, about disappearing, about never looking back. But then he thought about his mom, about Kennedy, about the 300 other people in Progressive Heights who'd never gotten justice. Yeah, he said, I'll be there. What do you think happens next? Drop a comment below and tell me what you'd do if you were Marcus. Would you trust Blake Carrington and hit that like button and subscribe because this story is about to take a turn nobody's expecting. Marcus arrived at the hospital at 8:45 a.m. He'd barely slept, spent the whole night replaying the phone call in his head. Why would Blake Carrington want to see him? To apologize? To threaten him? To pay him off? Marcus didn't trust any of it, but he came anyway, 'cause the security guard from yesterday recognized him. This time he didn't try to stop him, just nodded and pointed toward the elevator. 4th floor. Room 447. They're expecting you. Marcus rode the elevator alone. His reflection stared back at him in the metal doors. Same torn jacket, same worn-out shoes, same angry eyes. He looked like what he was, a kid from Progressive Heights with nothing left to lose. The elevator doors opened. Patricia Chen was waiting in the hallway. Tailored suit. Cold expression. She looked at Marcus like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Mr. Owens, follow me." She led him to Blake's room but stopped at the door. "Mr. Carrington has requested to speak with you alone. No family, no doctors, just you and him." Marcus frowned. "Why?" "That's between you and him." She opened the door and gestured for him to enter. Marcus hesitated, then stepped inside. Blake was sitting up in bed. Still looked half dead, but his eyes were sharper than yesterday. Focused. The door closed behind Marcus. They stared at each other in silence. Finally, Blake spoke. His voice was rough, like sandpaper. The lab results came back. Marcus didn't respond. "The water you brought, it had lead, arsenic, chromium-6, levels 30 times higher than what's considered safe." Blake paused, took a shallow breath. "The doctors ran the same test on my blood. Found the same toxins." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Vindication. Rage. Grief. Blake continued. "They said I've been exposed to contaminated water for at least 6 months. Maybe longer. It's what caused the liver failure, the kidney damage. Everything." "Good," Marcus said. The word came out cold. Blake flinched but didn't look away. "You were right. About all of it. Progressive Heights, the filtration system, my company cutting corners. I know I was right. I didn't need you to confirm it. I'm not trying to—" Blake stopped, started again. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that." "Then what do you want?" Blake reached for a folder on the table next to his bed. His hand shook. He pushed it toward Marcus. "Open it." Marcus didn't move. "Please," Blake said. Marcus grabbed the folder, flipped it open. Inside were documents, legal papers, bank statements, names, lots of names. "That's every person who lived in Progressive Heights during the contamination," Blake said. 347 people. I had my team track down every single one. Marcus's hand started shaking as he read the names. Sarah Owens. Kennedy Owens. His family. "I can't bring them back," Blake said, "but I can make sure what happened to them doesn't happen to anyone else." Marcus looked up. "What are you talking about?" Blake met his eyes. "I'm giving you my company." The room went silent. Marcus stared at him. "What?" "Carrington Industries, all of it. I'm signing it over to a trust. You'll be the executor. Every dollar it makes goes toward fixing what I broke, cleaning the water, compensating the families, rebuilding Progressive Heights." Marcus couldn't speak. "I've got maybe 2 days left," Blake continued. "I'm spending them making this right. Or trying to." Marcus threw the folder on the bed. "You think money fixes this? You think signing some papers makes you a good person?" "No," Blake said quietly. "I know it doesn't. But it's all I have left to give." Marcus turned to leave. "Wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. Blake's voice cracked. "Tell me about them. Your mother. Your sister. I want to know who they were." Marcus's fists clenched. "Why?" "Because I need to understand what I took from you." Marcus spun around. Tears were streaming down his face now. He didn't try to hide them. "My mom's name was Sarah. She was a nurse, worked double shifts to keep food on the table. She sang when she cooked. Terrible voice, but she didn't care." Blake listened. My sister Kennedy loved dinosaurs. Wanted to be a paleontologist. She was 7 years old and she could name every dinosaur that ever existed. Marcus's voice broke. They were everything, and you killed them for $3 million. Blake closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his face, too. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sorry doesn't bring them back. I know. They sat in silence. Two people from completely different worlds, connected by tragedy. Finally, Marcus spoke. If I take this deal, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for every family you destroyed. For every kid who lost their mom. Every parent who buried their child. Blake nodded. I understand. And when you die, I won't mourn you. I don't expect you to. Marcus picked up the folder again, looked through the documents. Legal. Real. Binding. Blake Carrington was giving away his empire. Outside the room, Gerald was losing his mind. He'd been trying to get past Patricia Chen for 20 minutes. She wouldn't budge. What's going on in there? He demanded. Private meeting. Private? With some random kid? I'm his brother. I have a right. You have no rights here, Mr. Carrington. Elise stood next to him, arms crossed. Carter was on his phone, probably tweeting about this. The door finally opened. Marcus walked out holding the folder. Gerald stepped in front of him. What did he tell you? What's in that folder? Marcus looked at him, then at Elise, then at Carter. Ask him yourself. He walked past them toward the elevator. Gerald burst into Blake's room. What the hell did you just do? Blake was exhausted. The conversation with Marcus had drained what little energy he had left. I did what I should have done 7 years ago. Which is what? Took responsibility. Gerald's face turned red. You gave him money, didn't you? You gave that kid a payout. I gave him more than that. How much? Blake smiled, weak but genuine. Everything. The machine started beeping erratically again. Gerald realized what that meant. No, you didn't. But Blake's expression said it all. He'd just signed away his entire empire to a 16-year-old boy from the neighborhood he destroyed, and for the first time in 3 days, Blake Carrington felt something other than pain. He felt peace. Gerald's face turned purple. You can't do this. I'll get lawyers. I'll fight this in court. Blake's breathing was getting worse. Each word cost him. Already. Legal. Patricia. Made sure. Elise pushed past Gerald into the room. She'd been quiet until now, watching everything unfold. But this was too much. Blake, think about your son. Carter is your heir. Your blood. Blake looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in years. When's his birthday? Elise blinked. What? Carter's birthday. When is it? She hesitated. June something. June 14th, Blake said. And you don't even know. Neither do I. We're his parents and we forgot our own son's birthday 3 years in a row. Carter was standing in the doorway now, phone still in his hand. Blake turned his head toward him. What do you want, Carter? Really want? Carter shrugged. I don't know. Money, I guess. For what? For stuff. Cars, travel, whatever. Blake closed his eyes. That's what I gave you. Money instead of a father. And look what it made you. Carter's face hardened. So now you're a saint? Now you care about morality? No, Blake said. I'm dying. And I finally see clearly. Gerald slammed his fist on the wall. This is insane. You're giving billions to a stranger because you feel guilty? That kid probably planned this whole thing, probably poisoned you himself. Blake's eyes snapped open. Get out. What? Both of you. All of you. Get out of my room. Gerald stepped closer. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. You want my money? You never wanted me. So leave. Elise grabbed Gerald's arm. Come on, he's not thinking straight. The medication, I'm thinking straighter than I have in 30 years, Blake said. His voice was getting weaker, but his words were sharp. You're vultures. All of you. Waiting for me to die so you can pick my bones clean. The machine started beeping faster. Blake was getting agitated. His heart couldn't take it. A nurse rushed in. Everyone out, now, you're killing him. Gerald pointed at Blake. He's killing himself and destroying this family. But the nurse was already pushing them toward the door. They left. Finally. Blake was alone again. He could feel his body shutting down. The toxins were winning. His organs were failing one by one. But his mind was clear. He thought about Marcus, about Sarah and Kennedy, about the 347 people whose lives he'd destroyed without even knowing their names. He'd spent 58 years building an empire. It took a 16-year-old boy with a water bottle to show him it was built on graves. Blake reached for the call button, pressed it. Dr. Patterson came in 5 minutes later. Mr. Carrington? How long do I have? Dr. Patterson looked at the monitors, at the charts, at Blake's pale face. Honestly? Maybe 24 hours. Your body has given up. Blake nodded. Then I need to work fast. Blake didn't sleep that night. He spent every minute on the phone with Patricia, his lawyer, dictating, signing documents electronically, making calls. His body was dying, but his mind was on fire. He thought about his whole life. Every decision, every shortcut, every person he'd stepped on to get to the top. Progressive Heights wasn't the only place he'd destroyed. There was the factory in Ohio he'd shut down, leaving 800 people unemployed right before Christmas. The small business owners he'd crushed to expand his real estate empire. The whistleblower he'd silenced with legal threats when she tried to expose safety violations at one of his hotels. 58 years of collateral damage. And he'd never looked back. Never checked. Never cared. Because winners don't apologize. That's what he'd always believed. Winners take what they want and let history sort out the rest. But history wasn't going to sort this out. Blake was going to die, and his legacy would be buildings with his name on them and graves without headstones. Unless he changed it. At 3 a.m., Patricia sent him the final documents. Everything is in order, she said over the phone. The trust is established. Marcus Owens is listed as the primary executor. The funds will be distributed according to your specifications. And my family? They'll receive the amounts you designated. It's more than generous considering. It's more than they deserve, Blake said. But it's enough to live on. They'll have to actually work for anything beyond that. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mr. Carrington, can I ask why you're doing this? Blake looked at the water bottle still sitting on his table. The lab had tested it and returned it as evidence. Evidence of his crimes. Because I'm dying the same way I made other people die, Blake said. And the only difference is I have the chance to make it mean something. He hung up. The room was dark except for the glow of the monitors. Blake thought about his mother. She'd worked herself to death so he could have opportunities. Died at 42 from a heart attack because she couldn't afford the medication. He'd become rich so he'd never be powerless like she was. But somewhere along the way, he'd become the thing that killed people like his mother. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Blake closed his eyes. His chest hurt. His head was pounding. Every breath felt like drowning. But for the first time in decades, Blake Carrington felt like he'd done something that mattered. Tomorrow, he'd meet with Marcus again. Tomorrow, he'd finish what he started. If he lived that long. Marcus couldn't sleep either. He sat in his cousin's basement staring at the folder Blake had given him. $8 billion. That's what Carrington Industries was worth. And Blake was giving it all away. To him. A kid who couldn't even afford new shoes. Marcus opened the folder again, read through the documents for the 10th time. It was real. All of it. Blake had already signed everything. Patricia Chen had confirmed it. The trust was legal, binding, irrevocable. In 48 hours, Marcus Owens would control one of the largest corporations in America, the same corporation that killed his family. Marcus thought about his mom. What would she say if she knew? Sarah Owens had been a nurse, but she'd also been a dreamer, always talking about how she'd open a free clinic someday, help people who couldn't afford health care. She'd never gotten the chance. But Marcus could. He could use Blake's money to build everything his mom had dreamed of. Free clinics, clean water, safe housing, education programs. He could turn Blake's empire of greed into something that actually helped people. Or he could burn it all down. Sell everything. Demolish every building with the Carrington name on it. Erase Blake's legacy completely. Both options felt like justice. Marcus didn't know which one his mom would want. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. He answered. "Mr. Owens, this is Dr. Patterson from Mayo Clinic. Mr. Carrington is requested to see you again, first thing in the morning." Marcus hesitated. Is he still alive? Barely, but yes. He's asking for you specifically. Why? He said he has something to tell you. Something important. Marcus looked at the clock. 3:47 a.m. I'll be there at 8. He hung up and stared at the ceiling. Part of him wanted Blake to die before he got there, wanted this to be over. But another part of him needed to hear what Blake had to say, needed to look him in the eye one more time, because this wasn't just about money or revenge or justice. This was about understanding how a human being could destroy so many lives and still sleep at night. Marcus needed to know if Blake Carrington had ever been human at all, or if money had turned him into something else entirely. Marcus arrived at 7:45 a.m. Blake was awake, waiting. He looked worse than yesterday, skin gray, eyes sunken, but he was conscious. Patricia Chen was standing in the corner with more documents. Marcus closed the door behind him. "You came," Blake said. His voice was barely a whisper. "You said you had something to tell me." Blake nodded slowly. He gestured to the chair next to his bed. Marcus sat down but kept his distance. Blake took a shallow breath. Speaking was getting harder. "I need to tell you the truth. All of it. I already know the truth." "No," Blake said. "You know what I did. But you don't know why." Marcus crossed his arms. "I don't care why. You should. Because it's the same reason you're here right now." Blake paused, gathered his strength. "I grew up in Progressive Heights." Marcus's eyes widened. "Yeah," Blake said. "Same neighborhood, same contaminated water, same poverty. My mom worked 3 jobs. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with roaches and rats." Marcus stayed silent. "When I was 12, my mom got sick. Liver disease. The doctor said it was from the water. The city knew. They'd known for years. But they didn't fix it because we were poor and black and nobody cared." Blake's voice cracked. "She died when I was 14. I promised myself I'd never be powerless like that again. I'd get rich. Get out. Make sure I never had to drink that water again." He looked at Marcus. "And I did. I made billions. I got everything I wanted. But somewhere along the way, I became the people who killed my mother." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "I didn't just destroy Progressive Heights," Blake continued. "I destroyed the neighborhood where I grew up, where my mom died. I poisoned the same water that poisoned her." Tears rolled down Blake's face. "I became the monster I swore I'd destroy. And I didn't even realize it until you showed me that bottle." The room was silent except for the beeping machines. Marcus's hands were shaking. "So what? You think telling me this sad story makes it okay?" "No," Blake said. "Nothing makes it okay. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something." He reached out and grabbed Marcus's hand. His grip was weak, but desperate. Don't become me. You have billions now. You have power. You can do anything. But don't let it turn you into what I became. Marcus pulled his hand away. I'm nothing like you. Not yet, Blake said, but anger and money are a dangerous combination. I know, I've lived it. Marcus stood up. I'm not here for life advice from a dying man. I know. You're here because you want me to suffer. And I am. But I need you to promise me something. I don't owe you anything. You don't. But promise me anyway. Blake's breathing was getting worse. The machines beeped faster. Promise me you'll use that money to help people, not to punish them, not to get revenge. Help them. Marcus turned away. Why do you care? Because if you don't, then everything I did, every person I hurt, every life I destroyed, it all means nothing. But if you can turn my empire into something good, then maybe what? You get forgiveness? You get into heaven? No, Blake said quietly. Maybe Sarah and Kennedy didn't die for nothing. Marcus froze. Those names, his mom, his sister. Blake said them like he knew them, like they mattered. Marcus turned around. Tears were streaming down his face now. You don't get to say their names. I know I don't deserve to, but I'll say them every day until I die, because they deserve to be remembered, and I'm the one who erased them. Marcus collapsed into the chair. He put his head in his hands and cried. Blake watched him. Waited. Finally, Marcus spoke through the tears. I can't promise you forgiveness. I can't promise you redemption, but I promise I'll help people. Not for you. For them. Blake nodded. That's all I'm asking. Gerald was in Patricia Chen's office screaming. This is fraud. He's not in his right mind. The medication has him confused. Patricia sat behind her desk, unmoved. Mr. Carrington underwent a full psychiatric evaluation yesterday. He's been deemed mentally competent. The documents are legal. I'm his brother. Half-brother. And you're entitled to exactly what he designated in the will. $5 million. Gerald's face went red. $5 million? I helped him build that company. I worked for 30 years. And you were compensated handsomely for that work. This is his company, his choice. Elise sat next to Gerald, quieter but just as angry. What about Carter? He's Blake's son. Carter receives $10 million and the house in Malibu. $10 million? Elise stood up. That's insulting. That's what Mr. Carrington decided. Gerald slammed his fist on the desk. We're contesting this. I'll tie this up in court for years. Patricia smiled. Cold, professional. You're welcome to try. But Mr. Carrington anticipated that. He's already released a statement to the press explaining his decision. It'll go public in 3 hours. She slid a document across the desk. Gerald grabbed it and read. His face went pale. The statement detailed everything. Progressive heights. The contaminated water, the 347 victims, Blake's confession, his decision to give his fortune to Marcus Owens. It was a full admission of guilt, and it was about to go viral. He's destroying his own legacy, Gerald whispered. No, Patricia said. He's finally telling the truth. Elise grabbed the document from Gerald and read it herself. This will ruin the Carrington name, ruin the company. Ruin everything. Patricia stood up. That's not your concern anymore. The company belongs to the trust, and the trust belongs to Marcus Owens. She walked to the door and opened it. This meeting is over. Gerald didn't move. I'll fight this. Good luck. They left. Patricia closed the door and sat back down. She'd worked for Blake Carrington for 15 years. Watched him build an empire. Watched him destroy people without thinking twice. This was the first time she'd ever been proud of him. Blake was alone when the statement went public. His phone had been flooded with messages. News outlets, business partners, investors. Everyone wanted answers, but Blake didn't care anymore. He'd told the truth. Finally. And it felt like freedom. He thought about his mother, wondered if she'd be proud or ashamed. Probably both. The door opened. Marcus walked in one last time. "It's all over the news," Marcus said. Blake nodded. "Good. People are calling you a monster." "I was." "Some are calling you a hero." Blake laughed. It turned into a cough. "I'm not." Marcus sat down. "What are you then?" Blake thought about it. "I'm just a man who waited too long to do the right thing." They sat in silence. Blake's breathing was getting slower. "Marcus," he said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me the truth. Even if it took 16 years and a water bottle to do it." Marcus didn't respond. Blake closed his eyes. "Tell me about Kennedy again. What dinosaur was her favorite?" Marcus smiled through tears. "Brachiosaurus. She said it was the tallest and she wanted to be tall when she grew up." Blake smiled too. "She would have been amazing." "Yeah, she would have." Blake's hand reached out. Marcus took it. And for the first time, they weren't a billionaire and a poor kid. They were just two people who'd both lost everything and found something in the loss. This story is hitting different, isn't it? If you're feeling something right now, anger, sadness, hope, drop it in the comments. Tell me what you'd do if you were Marcus. And smash that like button and subscribe because we're not done yet. Blake's got hours left, and what happens next will change everything. Blake knew he was running out of time. His body was shutting down. The doctor said maybe 12 hours, maybe less. But he had one more thing to do. He called Patricia at 2 p.m. "I need you to set up a press conference. Mr. Carrington, you can barely speak. You need to rest. I'll rest when I'm dead. Set it up. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Blake, I need the world to hear this from me. Not from a statement. From me." Patricia was quiet. Then, "I'll make it happen." Blake hung up and looked at Marcus, who was still sitting in the chair. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "The statement already went out. Everyone knows." Blake shook his head. "They know the facts, but they don't understand." "I need to make them understand." "Understand what?" "That this isn't just about me. It's about every billionaire who thinks money makes them untouchable, every corporation that poisons communities and calls it business, every person who climbs to the top by stepping on bodies." Blake coughed. It took him a minute to recover. "I need to show them what happens when you finally look down and see the damage." Marcus leaned forward. "And what happens?" Blake met his eyes. "You realize you're standing on a mountain of corpses, and there's nowhere to go but down." The next 12 hours were chaos. News vans parked outside the hospital. Reporters camped in the lobby. The story was everywhere. Dying billionaire confesses to poisoning community. Blake Carrington gives fortune to victim's son. The fall of an empire. Gerald tried 3 more times to get into Blake's room. Security stopped him every time. Elise released her own statement through her lawyer, distancing herself from Blake's actions. Carter posted on social media that he'd been betrayed by his own father and started a GoFundMe. Blake didn't respond to any of it. He spent the night preparing, writing notes, rehearsing what he'd say. Marcus stayed with him the whole time. "You should go home," Blake said around midnight. "Get some sleep." "I don't have a home," Marcus said. "Just a couch in my cousin's basement." Blake looked at him. "After tomorrow you'll have 20 homes. Mansions, penthouses, whatever you want." Marcus shrugged. "I just want my mom back." "I know." They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus asked the question he'd been holding back. "Do you think you're going to hell?" Blake didn't hesitate. "Yeah, probably." "Does that scare you?" "Terrified. But I deserve it." Marcus looked at the floor. My mom used to say everyone deserves forgiveness if they're truly sorry. Was she religious? No, just kind. Blake smiled. She sounds like she was an incredible person. She was. I wish I could have met her. Marcus's jaw tightened. You killed her instead. Blake nodded. I did. The honesty hurt more than any lie could. At 4 a.m., Blake fell asleep. The doctor said his body was conserving energy for one final push. Marcus watched him sleep. This man who'd destroyed his life, who was now trying to rebuild it. Marcus didn't know if he hated Blake or pitied him. Maybe both. Maybe that was okay. The press conference was set up in the hospital's largest conference room. 50 reporters. 20 cameras. Every major news network. Patricia wheeled Blake in at 9:03 a.m. He was in a wheelchair now, too weak to walk. An oxygen tube in his nose. IV still attached to his arm. He looked like death. The room went silent when he entered. Marcus stood in the back watching. Blake positioned himself at the podium. Patricia adjusted the microphone. Thank you for coming, Blake began. His voice was weak but steady. I don't have much time, so I'll make this quick. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. My name is Blake Carrington. I'm worth $8.3 billion and I'm a murderer. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras clicked frantically. Blake raised his hand. Let me finish. They quieted down. 7 years ago, my company built luxury condos in a neighborhood called Progressive Heights. To save money, we cut corners on the water filtration system. We knew the water was contaminated. We knew people would get sick. We did it anyway. Blake paused, took a breath through the oxygen tube. 347 people were poisoned. 62 of them died, including a nurse named Sarah Owens and her 7-year-old daughter Kennedy. He looked directly at the cameras. I killed them. Not with a gun or a knife, with greed, with indifference, with the belief that profit matters more than people. A reporter stood up. Mr. Carrington, are you expecting legal consequences? Blake smiled. I'm dying. I'll be dead in less than 24 hours. There are no legal consequences for me, but there should be for the system that let me do this. Another reporter. What about your family? Your company? I've given my entire fortune to Marcus Owens, the son of Sarah Owens. He'll use it to fix what I broke. My family gets enough to live comfortably. Nothing more. Why are you doing this? Blake looked at Marcus in the back of the room. Because a 16-year-old boy had more courage than I've had in 58 years. He walked into my hospital room with a water bottle and showed me the truth. And I finally had to face what I'd become. Blake's voice was getting weaker. He was fading. But he kept talking. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not a hero. I'm not even a good man trying to redeem himself at the last minute. I'm just a warning. He leaned into the microphone. If you're a CEO cutting corners to boost profits, you're me. If you're an investor ignoring where your money comes from, you're me. If you're climbing the ladder by stepping on people below you, you're me. Blake coughed. Blood appeared on his lips. Patricia moved toward him, but he waved her off. And one day, you'll be lying in a hospital bed realizing you traded your soul for numbers in a bank account. And it won't be worth it. The machines monitoring Blake started beeping erratically. Doctors rushed in, but Blake kept talking. Use your power to help people, not to destroy them. Because I'm living proof that all the money in the world can't buy back the lives you've taken. His eyes rolled back. The doctors grabbed him. Marcus ran forward. Blake collapsed. The press conference ended in chaos. Cameras captured everything. The billionaire dying on stage. The poor kid rushing to save him. The confession heard around the world. Within an hour, it was the most watched video on the internet. Within 6 hours, it had 500 million views. By the end of the day, every news outlet in the world was covering it. Blake Carrington's final act wasn't building an empire. It was tearing one down and showing the world exactly what it cost. They rushed Blake back to his room. Doctors worked frantically. Machines beeped. Nurses shouted medical terms Marcus didn't understand. But Marcus stayed by the door, watching. Blake was dying. Right now. In front of everyone. After 20 minutes, the chaos settled. The doctor stepped back. One of them looked at Patricia and shook his head. There's nothing more we can do. His organs are failing. It's only a matter of hours now. Patricia nodded. She'd been expecting this. Marcus walked into the room. The doctors left, giving them privacy. Blake's eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow, irregular, but he was still alive. Marcus sat in the chair next to the bed. You did it. The whole world heard you. Blake's eyes opened slightly. Good. They're calling you everything. Monster, hero, martyr, manipulator. What are you calling me? Marcus thought about it. Honest. Finally. Blake smiled. It was weak but real. That's all I wanted. The monitors beeped slower. Blake's heart was giving up. Marcus leaned closer. What do you want me to do? With the company? With everything? Blake took a shallow breath. Whatever. Sarah would have wanted. I never asked her about running a billion-dollar corporation. Blake almost laughed. She would have said, help people. That's what good people do. Marcus nodded. Yeah, she would have. Blake's hand reached out. Marcus took it. I'm scared, Blake whispered. Of dying? Of what comes after? Marcus squeezed his hand. My mom used to say death isn't the end, it's just going home. What if there's no home for people like me? Then you'll find out soon. Blake closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. I'm sorry, Marcus. For everything. I'm so sorry. Marcus felt his own tears coming. He didn't try to stop them. I know. They sat in silence. Just a dying billionaire and the kid he destroyed, holding hands in a hospital room. Outside, the world was on fire with Blake's confession. Social media exploded. Protests started outside Carrington Industries headquarters. Other CEOs were being questioned about their own practices. Blake Carrington had started a revolution, and he'd never see it. At 6:47 p.m., Blake's breathing changed, slower, weaker. Marcus called for the doctors, but Blake stopped him. No, just stay. Marcus sat back down. Blake looked at him one last time. You're going to change the world. I know it. How do you know? Because you already changed mine? Blake took one more breath, then stopped. The monitors went flat. The long, continuous beep filled the room. Blake Carrington was dead. Marcus sat there, still holding his hand, crying for a man he'd hated just 3 days ago. Not because he forgave him, but because he understood him, and understanding someone's brokenness is sometimes harder than hating them. The news broke immediately. Blake Carrington dead at 58. Billionaire dies hours after shocking confession. The man who gave away everything. The funeral was held 3 days later. Blake had left specific instructions. Small, private. No extravagant displays. 50 people attended. Most were business associates, a few distant relatives, Patricia Chen, some journalists documenting everything, and Marcus. He sat in the front row, wearing a suit Blake had left for him in the will. It fit perfectly. Gerald gave the eulogy. It was cold, rehearsed, meaningless. Blake was a complicated man. He built an empire. He made mistakes. But his legacy will live on. Marcus almost laughed. Gerald still didn't get it. Blake's legacy wasn't his buildings or his money. It was the truth he finally told. After the service, Patricia pulled Marcus aside. The trust is officially active. You have full control of Carrington Industries as of today. Marcus looked at her. I don't know how to run a company. Blake didn't either when he started. You'll learn. She handed him a folder. Blake left this for you. He wrote it the night before the press conference. Marcus opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I don't deserve to see what you build. I spent 58 years taking from the world. Now it's your turn to give back. You have more money than you'll ever need, more power than most people dream of. Don't waste it like I did. Build the clinic your mother wanted, clean the water I poisoned, help the families I destroyed, and when you're successful, because you will be, don't become me. Stay angry, stay hungry, but stay kind. The world doesn't need another Blake Carrington. It needs a Marcus Owens. Blake. Marcus folded the letter and put it in his pocket. He walked out of the funeral home into the sunlight. Cameras were waiting. Reporters shouted questions. Marcus, what are you going to do with the company? Are you going to sell it? Do you forgive Blake Carrington? Marcus stopped, looked at the cameras. I'm not here to forgive him. I'm here to finish what my mother started, which is helping people. That's what she did every day of her life. That's what I'm going to do with every dollar Blake left behind. What's your message to other billionaires? Marcus thought about it. Your money doesn't make you powerful. Your choices do. And every choice you make either helps someone or hurts them. Choose better than Blake did. He walked away. The reporters kept shouting, but Marcus didn't look back. He had work to do. Sarah Owens' son had just inherited an empire, and he was going to burn it down and rebuild it into something his mother would be proud of. Blake Carrington's story was over. Marcus Owens' story was just beginning. If this story moved you, don't just watch and leave. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what legacy you want to leave behind. Would you have forgiven Blake? Could you do what Marcus is about to do? Hit that like button if you believe one person can change the world. Subscribe because Marcus's journey is just starting, and you don't want to miss what he builds from the ashes. Your support means everything. Let's build something beautiful together. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of the old Progressive Heights Community Center. The building was abandoned, covered in graffiti, windows boarded up. This was where his mom used to volunteer every Saturday, where Kennedy learned to read. Now, it was nothing. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. Patricia, I'm ready. Start the project. Within a week, construction crews arrived. Not to tear it down, to rebuild it. The Sarah Owens Community Health Center, free medical care, free dental, free mental health services, no insurance required, no questions asked. It opened 3 months later. On the first day, 200 people showed up. People who couldn't afford doctors. People who'd been ignoring symptoms because they couldn't pay. People who'd lost hope. Marcus walked through the waiting room shaking hands, learning names. An elderly woman grabbed his arm. Is this real? It's really free? It's really free, Marcus said. She started crying. I haven't seen a doctor in 6 years. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. You'll see one today. I promise. He kept that promise. The clinic treated over 5,000 people in the first month. Word spread. Other communities asked for help. Marcus didn't hesitate. He built 5 more clinics across the country, all named after his mother. But he didn't stop there. He hired engineers to completely overhaul Progressive Heights' water system. Tore out every contaminated pipe, installed state-of-the-art filtration. Cost $47 million. Blake would have called it a waste of money. Marcus called it justice. He established a $2 billion fund for the families affected by the contamination. Every single person who'd gotten sick, who'd lost someone, who'd suffered, they got compensation. Real compensation. Not a settlement to make them go away. An apology in action. The news covered it all. Marcus became famous overnight. Magazine covers, talk shows. Everyone wanted to interview the teenager who'd inherited billions and actually used them to help people. But Marcus turned down most of the interviews. He didn't do this for publicity. He did it because his mom would have done the same thing. 1 year after Blake's death, Marcus stood on stage at a town hall in Progressive Heights. 300 people filled the room, people who'd survived the poisoning, families who'd lost loved ones, community leaders who'd been fighting for justice for years. Marcus looked out at them and saw his mom, his sister, every person Blake had erased. A year ago, Marcus began, a dying billionaire gave me his empire. People ask me why I accepted it, why I didn't just walk away. He paused. I accepted it because my mom taught me that when you have the power to help people, you don't walk away. You run toward them. The crowd was silent. Blake Carrington destroyed this community, but we're not going to let his legacy be destruction. We're going to build something so strong, so beautiful, so powerful that his name becomes a footnote. People started standing, clapping. This is our community now. This is our future. And we're going to make sure what happened here never happens anywhere else. The applause was deafening. Marcus stepped down from the stage and into the crowd. He hugged the elderly woman from the clinic, shook hands with a father who'd lost his daughter, talked to kids who reminded him of Kennedy. This was what power was supposed to look like. Not a corner office, not a mansion, not a bank account. People, real people, getting help, getting hope. Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at a photo. His mom and Kennedy, smiling, alive. I did it, he whispered. I kept the promise. He felt like they were watching, like they were proud. And for the first time since they died, Marcus felt like he could breathe again. 2 years after Blake's death, Marcus was invited to speak at a business conference. 5,000 CEOs, investors, and entrepreneurs. The exact kind of people Blake used to network with. Marcus almost said no, but then he thought about Blake's press conference, about the warning he'd given. These people needed to hear it too. Marcus walked on stage. No fancy suit, no prepared script, just him. My name is Marcus Owens. 2 years ago I was living in my cousin's basement. Now I control a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The audience leaned forward. You want to know the secret? I didn't earn it. I inherited it from a man who poisoned my family. Silence. Blake Carrington gave me everything because he realized too late that everything he'd built was worthless. He died alone, hated by his family, haunted by the people he'd killed. Marcus looked across the room. How many of you are on that same path? Nobody answered. How many of you have cut corners to increase profit, ignored safety regulations, underpaid workers, destroyed communities for development? The silence was thick. Blake thought he was untouchable. He thought money protected him from consequences, but in the end, the same poison he used to destroy others destroyed him. Marcus stepped closer to the edge of the stage. You have a choice. You can keep building empires on graves, or you can use your power to actually help people. He pulled out his phone, held up the photo of his mom and Kennedy. This is Sarah Owens. And this is Kennedy Owens. They're dead because a billionaire decided their lives were worth less than $3 million. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What would you do if someone showed you a picture of the people your business decisions killed? Would you care? Or would you justify it as just business? Marcus put his phone away. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to make you choose. Because every day you wake up with power is a day you decide what kind of person you are. He paused. Blake chose greed. He chose profit. He chose himself. And he died filled with regret. Marcus looked directly into the camera, filming the speech. Don't die like Blake Carrington. Live like Sarah Owens. Help people. Protect people. Remember that every decision you make affects real human lives. He stepped back from the microphone. That's it. That's my whole speech. Now go make your choice. Marcus walked off stage. The room stayed silent for 10 seconds. Then one person stood and started clapping. Then another. Then another. Within a minute, the entire room was standing. Not because Marcus had given them answers, but because he'd given them a mirror. And for the first time, some of them didn't like what they saw. The speech went viral. Over 2 billion views in the first week. CEOs started changing policies. Companies established ethics boards. Some billionaires began donating to communities they'd harmed. Not all of them, but enough to make a difference. Marcus Owens had done what Blake Carrington couldn't. He'd changed the conversation, and he was just getting started. This is where I ask you the question. Blake asked the world, what will you do with your time? With your power? With your choices? Drop a comment and tell me one thing you're going to do differently after hearing this story. Hit that like button if you believe change is possible. And subscribe because Marcus's mission isn't over, and neither is ours. We're building something together, a community that believes in using power to help, not hurt. Don't just watch. Be part of the change. Let's go.